All right, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, as always, I'd like to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha HaKodash, double honors unto the apostles and elders of great millstone who rule well. Salutations to you, sincere, hopefully like Akim, pushing the word of Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, in spirit and in truth. All right, my Rabbi, a lot, that is to say 144,000 in the Lashawan Kodash. That is what we are striving to be a part of, being in this ministry. All right. So getting to this lesson, I'm gonna play a little snippet of this video from Redacted that there's a Apostle Tahar went into it, I believe, yesterday. And other brothers, if I'm not mistaken, have went into this as well. So I want to play like the first couple minutes and then edify with scriptures, because you know what Clayton is going to mention in the first couple minutes of this video is what the prophets can see being prophecy unfolding before our very eyes. All right, now you know the untrained eye, so to say. All right, the regular person, the average person in the world, might know that, you know, this is leading to World War III, but they don't understand, you know, how you can find that in the scriptures, how the scriptures, you know, clearly illustrate, you know, World War III, and the prophets having the knowledge of how to look at the events happening and unfolding in the earth, you know, how to funnel that through the scriptures. Okay. Now, these people know, oh, World War III, because, you know, that's a major talking point now. Okay. But before these actions that's happening, that's, you know, being carried out in the earth, before those had even started happening, you know, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40 years ago, you know, the apostles and the elder bishops, you know, and the men of great millstone who, you know, ended up coming into this truth and so on and so forth, been speaking of these things, you know, been speaking of World War III. You know, when people thought you was a bug out if you was talking about World War III. All right, the prophets of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai been speaking on World War III. All right, but now that it's visible, you know, as far as seeing that that's the only conclusion. All right, and all the world's armies pretty much gearing up and getting ready for World War III. Now everybody wants to jump on the bandwagon. All right, but let me play the first couple minutes of this, and then I'll grab some scriptures and edify.
You know, our country's at a tipping point. We could go bad. We're at a tipping point.
A tipping point? Folks, that might be the understatement of the year, because while the media is obsessing over clickbait and manufactured outrage, NATO's worst nightmare is quietly becoming reality. And
okay, so look, this is interesting. All right. So look at these European countries. All right, NATO, the ones in green. If you look all the way to the left, you have Canada. All right, all the way to the left. You got Iceland, which is centered, all right, in between Greenland and in Europe. Okay, I think that's Norway or Sweden, one of the two. And then, you know, you got these European nations, the rest of the European nations. All right, now you got certain European nations that aren't a part of NATO. Okay, so the ones not highlighted are not part of NATO. All right, but the ones in green are part of NATO. Now look how far north they are in comparison to Russia. All right, Russia is the uttermost north, but you know they're at a high latitude as well. All right, so just take that into note.
Technocratic control of the United States under Palantir and Peter Thiel and all of those guys is happening in real time. And yes, everything is changing right before our eyes. I'm going to show you exactly how this is unfolding. So over the past 48 hours, I received exclusive information from sources, information that has not been reported anywhere else. And here it is, that 2 Russian nuclear submarines have arrived off the coast of Venezuela.
All right, now, two Russian nuclear subs. Okay, so Russia got the ability to hit you. All right, and you know they can hit you from the sea. Or, you know, they can hit you from land, or they can hit you from sea. All right, so 2 nuclear subs pulled up to Venezuela, or heading there from Russia.
More are,
which Russia is a nuclear power. There's only a couple nuclear powers in the world, and Russia is one of them. Actually, they're number 1. All right.
On their way. This is in addition to the Russian battleships and cruisers, which have already headed to the region, and that has been reported. Let that sink in. These are not patrol ships. These are not advisors. These are nuclear submarines. And if you understand Russia's nuclear submarine fleet right now, this should set off alarms, because Russia's undersea nuclear capability is not just competitive with the United States, it's blowing us away. It surpasses us in several key areas: in size, in stealth, innovation. Their 2 new style submarines are the apex predators of the ocean right now, and we can't compete. And they are parked right now in our hemisphere. Why? Because something much bigger is happening behind the scenes, something Washington and Brussels don't want to talk about. They keep talking around it, but we're going to talk straight at it today. And here it is. Last week, President Trump quietly unveiled what insiders are now calling the Trump Doctrine. You could call it the Trump Corollary. It's a seismic rewriting of the U.S. grand strategy that effectively ends the unipolar order that America has dominated since 1945. The U.S. as the reserve currency, as the superpower. Gone. Trump just declared it. Dare I say that this is a game changer? You probably didn't hear about it because the media totally ignored it, completely actually. But Europe heard it, China heard it, Russia definitely heard it, hence the submarines. And Trump told the truth, that NATO never once spoken out loud. There are now 3 great powers in the world: the United States, China, and Russia. That's it. Europe?
You hear that? All right, so there's only 3 superpowers. And NATO is not, all right, those European nations are not included in that. So how do you think they feel about that? All right. Which America is part of NATO, but it shits on NATO. Trump shits on NATO. All right. So according to prophecy, you know, they're not going to take a liking to that.
According to Trump's own national security team, Europe will cease to be relevant within 20 years. Their entire civilization changed forever. This isn't me saying this. This is the Trump administration's official view, written down in a new doctrine. Trump's new strategy document essentially stunned the mainstream by bluntly stating that Europe faces a civilizational collapse, and it will be done, finished in 20 years. And of course, that means the death.
All right. So if America is an ally to NATO, all right, an ally of NATO, because, you know, it's a member of NATO, which by default makes them allies, and it's saying things like this, all right, it's contributing to their demise. Okay? NATO understands that America is contributing to their demise, being that the U.S. President Donald Trump talks like he does, on top of the tariffs he placed on, you know, the NATO, on pretty much the world. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so they can see that this dude is, as Donald Trump said in the beginning, we can go bad. All right, they see that, you know, Donald Trump is on a crash out mission.
Of NATO, a fossil that no longer is relevant. Colonel Douglas McGregor reacted to this on our show earlier this week by saying bluntly that NATO is dead. Watch.
NATO is disintegrating. We're trying to maintain this facade that such an alliance actually existed as meaningful. But if you look at Berlin right now and Germany is like a volcano that is beginning to erupt.
This is the real world now. And Trump, unlike the neocons, is acknowledging it. So let's talk about Venezuela, because what you're
All right. So, yeah. So another thing, too, I wanted to make mention of was those elites that run Europe. Okay. Which, Amalek, the small hats, they have their puppets everywhere. Okay. They have their puppets everywhere. But the elites that run Europe, are incest elites. They come from the elite families, okay, by way of incest to keep their bloodline, so-called pure. All right, so they're all demented, despite them walking around, with a suit and tie on and making policies and standing in front of a camera and saying what they're going to do for the people and pushing agendas and all this. They are severely demented. Okay. They're Edomites. Okay. So they want to remain, in power. They want to remain relevant. All right. And being that you got Donald Trump pretty much telling them that they're nobody, they're not going to be a factor in the world within a certain amount of time. They're not going to take that kindly. Okay. They're going to do something about it, man. All right. So next, let me grab this real quick. And this was from DeepSeek. And I said, I asked the chat, I said, how many countries have ICBMs that can reach the shores of America? It said, based on available military analysis, the confirmed countries with operational ICBMs capable of reaching the continental United States are Russia, China, and the United States, the United Kingdom, and France. And what did we just watched a video where Clayton had made mention that the three superpowers in the world is China, Russia, and America. All right, which those three have nuclear capabilities. All right, along with the United Kingdom and France. All right, so in the scriptures, certain places in the scriptures, one thing to take note of is the United States is considered a North country in certain scriptures, and then Russia as well is considered a North country. Okay, in the scriptures as well. And also, like I had pointed out with that map that was on Redacted, where it showed the NATO countries, that latitude that those NATO countries sit upon, Norway, France, Spain, Germany, so on and so forth. That's you got certain parts of the U.S. that's on that same latitude. Okay, on that same latitude. It says Russia, China, the United States, the United Kingdom, and France. North Korea has tested such missiles, but questions about its full operational readiness remains. It says the following summary lists the known operational arsenals given the limitations of your screen. I've organized the key details to a mobile-friendly list. All right, so it says nuclear-armed states with intercontinental reach. It says Russia. All right. Going down to where it says strategic position, it says it has the world's largest and most diverse nuclear arsenal, though its modernization program faces delays. But the key point to take away from this is the most diverse, nuclear arsenal belongs to Russia. So for China, strategic position, it says actively modernizing and expanding its nuclear forces, now deploying a nuclear triad, which a nuclear triad is land, air, and sea. All right, those are the three. Those three consist of the nuclear triad, or the nuclear triad consists of those three: land, air, and sea. So China is, you know, expanding into that. It says the United States strategic positioning. It says it maintains a nuclear triad, land, sea, air, and is modernizing its entire nuclear arsenal. All right, which there was a news about 2-3 months ago, how, you know, due to certain nuclear advancements that these other countries was making, you know, now the U.S. wants to, you know, start testing nukes again. All right. It says the United Kingdom's strategic position maintains a continuous at-sea nuclear deterrent with its missiles and submarines closely linked to U.S. systems. All right. So that's another key point. The UK's nuclear missiles and submarines are closely linked to U.S. systems. Okay, so, you know, some of their how should I put it? Some of the ways they can actually utilize, you know, these nukes is based upon, you know, U.S. systems. All right, which, you know, is kind of I don't want to say dependent, you know, but if you had nukes, you should want your own systems, you know, that's not linked to another country, you know. France, it says a strategic position maintains a independent nuclear deterrent separate from NATO command. Okay, so France got their own nukes. Now you got to remember, Napoleon was famous because he was good with the pretty much geometry. When you watch that movie Napoleon, he was good with the, you know, the math that it took to be useful with those cannons. All right, in war. All right, he knew how to operate those cannons, which gave them, France, a strategic advantage at war. Okay, because he knew how to, you know, use those cannons. All right, so France, they got nukes, but they're not dependent upon NATO. Okay, now the United Kingdom, they're they were, well, you know, as it says, they're nuclear deterrent with missiles and submarines closely linked to the U.S. So they're kind of dependent upon the U.S. systems to operate those. Okay, so just a little bit of information on, you know, the various countries that have a nuclear capability. All right, now I want to grab some scriptures. And let's start here in Jeremiah 50:9. It says, for lo, it says, for lo, excuse me. For lo, I will rise and cause to come up against Babylon an assembly of great nations from the north country. So look at, you know, Russia is the uttermost north. Okay. But also you got these other countries, these European countries, you know, that's north as well. Okay. So this is all the north. It's just Russia's just the uttermost north. Just the same way, you know, you go over here, you got Canada and US, you know. So continuing on, it says, for lo, I will rise and cause to come up against Babylon an assembly of great nations from the north country, and they shall set themselves in array against her. From thence she shall be taken. All right, now you already got Russia with the subs over in Venezuela. All right, that's they're surrounding, or they're stationed at the southern part of America. All right, in particular, you know, not too far from, you know, they're in the Gulf, that Gulf area, which is not far from Texas, you know, those southern states. All right. It says their arrows shall be as of a mighty expert man, none shall return in vain. All right. Now, it mentioned that that the UK had subs. Okay. Oh, what was that? Let's see. Okay, yeah. It mentioned yeah, the UK, all right, the United States, United Kingdom had submarines, all right. And what else was that? Oh, I believe Russia, all right, they had the, you know, the most diverse. Okay. So you got these nations that got these submarines, all right, that can surround Babylon. Okay. So once again, it says midway through or the latter part of verse 9, it says, from thence she shall be taken. Her their arrows shall be as of a mighty expert man, none shall return in vain. And Chaldea, all right, which is another word for Babylon, all right, which means in the Hebrew, it goes into clod breakers, okay, but it says the clod breakers. So it says, and Chaldea shall be a spoil. All that spoil her shall be satisfied, saith Yahweh. Because ye were glad, because ye rejoiced, O ye destroyers of mine heritage. Okay. Now, so like it, I should scroll down. It says, because you were glad, because you rejoice, O ye destroyers of mine heritage, because ye are grown fat as the heifer at grass and bellow as bulls. All right. In the NLT, verse 11, it says, ye rejoice and are glad, you who plundered my chosen people. All right. Now it was Esau that plundered us. Okay. That to this day, what are they trying to do in Venezuela? Plunder them. All right. Nigeria, plunder them. Okay. The history of the Americas is a result of Edomites, you know, the French, the English, the Spanish, plundering the Lord's people. All right. It says, NLT verse 11, it says, you rejoice and are glad, you who plundered my chosen people. You frisk about like a calf in a meadow and nigh like a stallion. All right. Back in the KJV verse 12, it says, your mother shall be sore confounded. She that bare you shall be ashamed. Behold, the hindermost of the nations shall be a wilderness, a dry land, and a desert. All right. So the mother of Babylon the Great is referring to Britain. Okay. It's referring to, the British. because America was spawned out of Britain. All right, the nation that was pretty much the big dog, all right, on the playground before America took that role was the British. You know, they got the saying, the sun never sets on Britain or something like that. Okay. But after World War II, you know, sometime after World War II is when, you know, America assumed that role of pretty much being, you know, the real power, the superpower on the world, of the world, on the planet. Okay. So even the mother of Babylon the Great, all right, America, the mother of this place being the British, they gonna come to a point, you know, where they ain't gonna be having no dealings with America. You know, one thing to think about is, you know, those British really want that war to continue over there in Ukraine. You know, they just, matter of fact, Zelensky was just in Britain. You know, was just in the UK, kissing ass. All right, they're all small hats. All them, you know, elites that run Europe they're all small hats. You know, the top tier of them. All right, it's one big family. But they want that war to continue over in Ukraine. You know, and eventually want to move into, which that war is already, it's a wrap. Russia's is whooping ass over there, but they're not gonna put that in Western media. However, NATO, you know, the UK want that war to continue going on in Ukraine because they want to advance. They want to advance further east into Russia. You know, that's what the elites. That's what they want. All right, those elites in NATO and in the EU. That's what they want. They want war to continue because they want control. All right, they want to take over Russia. All right, so even the British, all right, which is the mother of America, is going to come to a point to where, you know, they're going to be at odds with this place. Now, let me look this word confounded up here in Jeremiah. Where is it? Okay. So this is H954, and it's Bawash. All right. And down here in the Strong's definitions, it says a primitive root, properly to pale, an example by implication, to be ashamed, also by implication, to be disappointed or delayed. Okay. B, make, bring, to cause, put to, with. A, shamed, be put to, confounded, confusion, become dry, delay, belong. All right. So, you know, they're going to be ashamed at something. Babylon's going to do something to where it's going to cause them to be ashamed, you know, and they're going to push that button. Okay. Verse 13, it says, because of the wrath of Yahweh, it shall be, it shall not be inhabited, but it shall be wholly desolate. Even every one that goeth by Babylon shall be astonished and hiss at all her plagues. All right. So, you know, America, when it's up in flames, could you imagine the reactions of the people? You know, the hiss at something is like, Man, look at that. Like, damn. You know, you see some judgment. All right, a car smashed. You know, a crazy ass wreck. You know, people, you know, getting ejected from cars, getting in car crashes, or just some crazy ass judgment. You know, a lot of times people just shake their head and suck their teeth and hiss like or sigh or just like like damn, you know. So that's gonna be, you know, the emotions that these people gonna feel, you know, seeing Babylon's destruction is gonna cause them, you know, to hiss. All right, let's look that word hiss up real quick. This is H8319 and it's Sharak. All right, Sharak. It says to hiss, whistle, pipe, to hiss as a signal, like you know, sometimes somebody want to get your attention. You know, you're at work. You know, if you work, you know, construction or outside, you know, in you know, in an open space, you know, and there's distance between you and somebody else. You're trying to get their attention to wave them over because you know you gotta show them something or something like that. You might whistle, you know, to get their attention. Or if they ain't paying attention and something dangerous could potentially happen, you'll whistle to get their attention to, you know, so you can point out what they need to avoid. Okay. So it says to be shrill, an example to whistle or hiss as a call or in scorn. Or in scorn. Okay. Now, back in Jeremiah verse 14, it says, put yourselves in array against Babylon round about, all ye that bend the bow. Shoot at her, spare no arrows, for she hath sinned against the Lord. All right. So this place has greatly sinned against Yahweh Hashem Yahushai and is continuing to sin against Yahweh Hashem Yahushai. All right. And one of the major sins that this place is going to do in transgressing against Yahweh Hashem Yahushai is rolling out that MOTB. Okay, rolling out that mark of the beast, and really focusing on. If you think Esau was focused on Jake, all right, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians, all right, during COVID with his promotion of that vaccine, if you think that Negroes was targeted, and you know even matter of fact, because it was Trump that was in office in 2020. All right, that was making it a point to give that jump shot specifically to Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians out of his own mouth. You know, he stated those the Latinos, the Negroes, and the Native Americans. He stated that that's who the jab needed to go to first. Okay, so if you think that, you know, what makes you not? What makes you think that he wouldn't do that again, in reference to, you know, pushing that chip? All right, that's who the target audience is going to be ultimately. Is going to be the children of Israel. That's who they want. You know, if anybody they can have chipped up, they would want all the children of Israel chipped up. Okay, so it says verse 14 one more time. It says, put yourselves in array against Babylon round about, all ye that been the bow, shoot at her, spare no arrows, for she has sinned against the Lord. All right, so you know, this place Babylon is, you know, filled with a, you know, wickedness that the Lord is gonna, you know, do away with in due time. All right, so next I want to grab Revelation 17, and I'm gonna start at verse let me start at let me start at 7. It says Revelation 17 and 7. It says and the angel of the Lord, and the angel said unto me, wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carrieth her, which has 7 heads and 10 horns. Okay, so the woman, all right, is America, Babylon the Great, and the beast that carries her with the 7 heads and 10 horns is referring to NATO. All right, okay, which pretty much the 7 heads is 7 Edomite ruling nations. Okay, there were 7 major nations within, or 7 major countries, so to say, within the nation of Edom, Esau, Edom, that has, ruled for specific amounts of times throughout the course of history. Okay. So, and it'll get more into it as we continue. Verse 8, it says, the beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition. Okay, so the beast, referring to the Roman Empire, all right, in times past, it says was and is not, because you had the Roman Empire that ruled, and then you had Jake come up into power, and they took over the Roman Empire, which then it became known as the Holy Roman Empire. All right, and then you also, at the same time, had Jake's ruling, the Byzantine Empire. Okay, the so-called Dark Ages. All right, when before the Renaissance, when Jake was in power. It says the beast that thou sawest was, okay, the Roman Empire, and is not, because it fell, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. All right, the bottomless pit being Europe. All right, there's not many resources that come up out of Europe, which is why a lot of those European countries, pretty much plunder. Shit, look what they did to the Americas, man. Okay, that's why they invest in Latin American countries. They invest in Africa. They invest in all these countries outside of Europe, because Europe doesn't have resources like that. Okay. It says and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition. Okay. And went into perdition, being, the Dark Ages. When Jake was in power, Esau pretty much was a nobody. All right. And they that dwell on earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they when they behold the beast that was and is not and yet is. Okay. So it went into perdition, the Roman Empire, the ancient Roman Empire. All right, you had Jake ruling, all right, during the so-called Dark Ages, and then Esau came back into power during the so-called Renaissance. All right, their rebirth. That was pretty much ancient Rome, the ancient Roman Empire, coming back into play. All right, which it really got to that prestige, via America. All right, so verse 9, it says, and here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 horns on which the woman sitteth. Okay. 7 heads. All right. Which is going into Esau's power structure. All right. Which you had, the French, or, the Greeks, the French, the Spanish, Germania Major, Germania Minor, the British, the Romans, and America. Okay. Or which, America is the 8th, but, the Romans, the British, Germania Major, Germania Minor, the French, the Spanish, and the Greeks. All right. Those are those 7, heads. Okay. Which are 7 mountains, which, a mountain represents a government. All right. A rulership, a power in the earth. Okay. And it says on which the woman sitteth, which, America sits on top of that beast. Okay. Those, European, powers. All right. AKA NATO. Verse 10, it says, and there are 7 kings. All right. 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. All right. Which is pretty much, recapping what was just mentioned. So the 5 that are fallen, and 1 is. So you had the Greeks, the Romans. All right. You had Germania Major, Germania Minor, the French. All right, which those are the 5 that are fallen. All right, because it said 5 are fallen and 1 is, which was the Spanish. Okay. It says, and the other is not yet come, which after Spain ruled, you had the British that ruled. All right. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space, because the British didn't rule for all that long in comparison to these other NATO or European countries. All right. The other, 5. All right. It says, verse 11, and the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th. All right. So the beast that was and is not. All right. Meaning at this particular point in time, when John the Revelator was receiving this revelation, America wasn't even thought of. All right. You know what I'm saying? Well, nor was the these other powers that ruled to a certain degree, but Babylon the Great in particular was not even thought of. Okay. So, and the beast that was and is not, all right, being the ancient Roman Empire, it was around at a point in time, then fell and is not, even he is the 8th, all right, America, and is of the 7th, which is the British, and goeth into perdition. Okay. And goeth into destruction. All right. Because America is slated to be destroyed. All right. Now, America is a product of the British. All right. America, you had the British, certain English people, or people from Britain, that came here to the Americas, trying to, pretty much, that was illegal aliens. What Esau is trying to round up so-called illegals for not being here legally. That and supposedly a lot of these people coming here to the Americas, are coming to America are coming to escape persecution or escape their countries at war. They're seeking asylum and things of that nature. Well, some of those reasons is why the English claim to have came over here for, okay, to practice their religious freedoms and all that mumbo jumbo, all right, that they hold fast to, okay. It says, and is of the seventh and goeth into perdition. All right, so that's America, because America stems from Britain, which is why I said that in Jeremiah 50, thy mother shall be confounded. All right, being Britain. Verse 12. All right, so its own mama's gonna spank them. All right, gonna participate in setting this place on fire. Verse 12. It says, and the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings which have received no kingdom as yet. All right, those 10 horns is going into the EU. All right, but receive power. But receive power. Where am I? But receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. Okay, which that 1 hour is equals 42 years when you do the calculation. All right, so the 10 horns, like I said, is the EU, which came about via the Treaty of Rome on 1 January 1st, 1958, which was after World War II. All right, and really, the EU currently consists of, I want to say, 28 member states. All right, and initially in 1951, it was the Treaty of Paris. All right, which formed the ECSC, which was the European Coal and Steel Community. All right, which was one of the resources of Europe. All right, to allow them to trade with in that steel and so on and so forth. All right, and which is crazy, that steel was a commodity in Europe, which that aided in Europe looking like it looks now. All right, the Lord allowed that to be a commodity there, so they can make it look like a Petra. All right, so they can build a bunch of sky caves. All right, to look like Petra. All right. And then after that, it was changed to the European, or the EEC, which is the European Economic Community. All right, and originally there were only 6 member states. All right, 6 parties, which was Belgium, France, Italy, Luxembourg, Netherlands, and West Germany. All right, so those are the OG members of the EEC. Okay, or the EU. Verse 13. It says these. Let me read 12 again. It says, and the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. Okay, so 42 years once again. All right. Verse 13, it says, these have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast, which that's NATO. All right, so they're gonna give their power to NATO. Okay. These shall make war with the Lamb. Now remind you, we read about in Deep Seek how you had a France that had its own independent nuclear system. Okay, you got the UK, that has nuclear capability. They use a U.S. system, but they have that capability. All right, so they they got the ability to hit America with thermonuclear fire. So what they're going to do is they're going to give their power and strength unto the beast, which is NATO, which both France, I believe, France and the UK, or well, yeah, they're both part of NATO. The UK, I don't believe, is part of the EU anymore. Which is why they had that Brexit, what they had called the Brexit back in 2017, I think. But France, being a NATO member, got nukes, and the UK, being a NATO member, has nukes as well. All right. So verse 13, these have one mind, all right, the EU, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. All right, NATO. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them. For he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. Okay. So the elect is gonna overcome Esau, Edom in every capacity through Yahweh Shai. All right. And these demons, all right, these NATO and EU and these demons, all the armies of the earth is going to be trying, in particular, being that we're reading this here in Revelation 17, these damn Edomites is going to try and actually fight against Yahweh Shai, man, which is absurd, man. Verse 15, it says, and he shall, and he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the whore sitteth, all right, the whore being America, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. All right. So being matter of fact, I got it queued up. Revelation 18 and 21, it says, and a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and cast it into the sea, saying, thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. All right. So the sea represents the people. All right. So the sea, aka Babylon the Great, a sea, you got all kind of stuff in the sea, man. All right. Sea creatures. You got crabs, lobsters, fish, all kind of fish. All right. And that's what you got here in America. You got a melting pot of heathen. All right. Israelites as well. All right. But it's a melting pot of people. It's a metropolitan, a big ass metropolitan. All right. Verse 15, it says, he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the whore sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. And the 10 horns, all right, the EU, which thou sawest upon the beast, okay, NATO, these shall hate the whore, America, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire, or thermonuclear destruction. For the Most High have put in their hearts to fulfill his will. So the will of Yahweh Shem Shai is going to be done. That's why, this every day in the news, it's like a step closer to the nukes flying, man. Now we're in a time, it's never a dull moment. It's always something exciting to look forward to in the news pertaining to the approaching of America's destruction, all right, which the prophets clearly see, All right. The true men of the Lord clearly see it. All right. And it excites us. Verse 17, it says, "For the Most High hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will and to agree and to give their kingdom unto the beast." All right. Talking about the EU, giving their kingdom unto the beast, which is NATO, until the words of the Most High shall be fulfilled. And the woman which thou sawest, all right, is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth, America, in which that is another that's a problem. America, Babylon the Great, ruling over the kings of the earth. These nations ain't with that no more. Okay, they're not with that. Matter of fact, even Clayton went into the that as Apostle Tahar was calling it, the Trump doctrine. Something that Trump had just put out there, changing his stance on so I forget exactly what it was, but he has to do that because these nations ain't with just flat out colonialism. The colonizer coming and taking what he want, and you just gotta shut up and accept it. These nations ain't with that. They ain't having that no more, man. Which is why, they have, Venezuela in particular, using them for an example, they have, interests, or Russia and China have interests in, the development of Venezuela. The Chinese, I believe there was a video I had seen where it stated that they laid the infrastructure for the oil refineries for Venezuela. All right. So they got money. China got money invested in Venezuela, and they ain't about to let Trump just come disrupt, the oil industry in which they laid down the infrastructure for the oil to even be refined in Venezuela. And Russia got interests and investments in Venezuela as well. All right. So these nations ain't just going to let America be the bully on the block no more like that. All right. Just doing what it wants to. Okay. So, I just want to bring that out, edify on that little bit of that video. Because I found that interesting when I looked at the video yesterday. And, I brought this out. This was edifying. Until next time, I say shalom.